Welcome back to another episode of the Forever Game Podcast, and today we have Sarah Swedburg on. Sarah Swedburg is, she has something to do with like Willmar City Planning, Willmar Main Street. She does all of these sort of cool downtown city planning things. Now, I don't really know what it is she does, so that's what we had her on to figure out, because it seems like she wears a lot of different hats, and almost all of them are centered around helping small businesses grow in our rural community. I hope you enjoy. Sarah, thanks for joining us on the Forever Game Podcast. We have been asking you for a while now, and finally you were able to make it work in your schedule. And so, what do you do, Sarah?
What do? I do many things. So first and foremost, I'm the planner for the city of Willmar, which means that I deal with people coming into town, new businesses, people expanding their businesses. Maybe it's a property owner that's wanting to do something with their house, or just think about how we as a community are growing. And what that all entails and what that trajectory looks like. And then I also am a coordinator for the Willmar Main Street program, which is all about downtown Willmar and thinking about our vibrancy and exciting things going on down there. And then what else do I do? And then I have a bunch of other hats that I wear outside of work too.
A lot of like boards and volunteer work and stuff, right?
Yeah, I help with Willmar Fest, and I am one of the high school speech coaches, which are like all things I tell myself I'm doing in my spare time to like enjoy outside of work.
So the city planning thing?
Yeah.
So you're talking about like zoning places where like, or are you talking about like when someone would come in, you said about someone building a house. Do we need permits to build a deck?
Yeah.
But it's yes, but it's complicated, right?
Yes,
so
but
there's
it's complicated. Like it's not that
gray area.
No, you need a permit to build a deck.
I don't know what you're planning on doing, Tyler.
Yeah, what are you doing?
No. Now that I know that you need
not everybody knows
permits, I'll just make sure that deck that I built 3 years ago is just fine, right?
Good plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already done, long gone.
There's going to be a statute of limitations on that.
The crime has been committed so long ago that it's no longer.
Yeah, most work that goes on in the city limits needs permit. For putting up a fence, you don't need a permit. There's a couple of things like that, but
Tyler's taking another time out.
I feel like that's one thing that a lot of people don't. It isn't as common knowledge as you think it would be, especially in like greater Minnesota, I think.
Yeah.
Because people, like so many people live not within a city limit where they really need to worry about permits or something like that. And so it just kind of depends on where you grew up, really, I think, as to whether you actually know that is common knowledge or not.
Yeah, I don't know when what.
Go ahead. Go. I was just going to like cut to something that just came into my brain.
Okay.
But so city planner, like interested in or doing some work with the downtown. Mm-hmm. And for those that are just the listeners, Sarah's age, I'm going to guess this, is 24. And city planner sounds like something that like a really old person would do. Why is it exciting to you?
I think that's probably the closest that anybody's ever guessed my age to be, and it's still incorrect.
Tyler, she's like a baby compared to me.
I'm like 22. I'll be 23 this week.
She'll be. Oh, your birthday this week?
Birthday's on Thursday.
Nice.
So you're only like a year off, which is rather impressive.
Yeah, actually. Well,
that's
you
good.
Could have been one of my students.
Good. I'm like growing up.
It's depressing.
Sarah, can we quick tell the background story of how you landed in Willmar? Like where you grew up, went to school, and then what you thought you were going to do, because you're still so fresh out of college, sort of.
Right.
So.
It's strange. So I grew up in Walker, Minnesota, which is up on Leech Lake, about 30 minutes south of Bemidji, if you're familiar with that kind of regional area.
Is that Moondance Jam?
It is Moondance Jam. It's been canceled this year. Dang it. Fun fact, a good majority of locals, especially in Walker, flee those kind of things. Eel pout, Moondance, all of that. It's like, I'm going to hibernate in my house while those things are going on. But, or we're all just working to make it possible because the population is so much smaller than the population that comes up there. But anyway, grew up in Walker. I was actually born in St. Louis, Missouri, but we moved up to Walker when I was very young.
In 1998.
99. We moved to Bemidji.
He's still trying to wrap his head around that.
Do you know who Randy Moss is? Have you ever heard of that person?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I had to think about it for a second. I'm really bad at just saying yes and then
then backpedaling because you don't actually know.
And be like, wait, no, I don't. Yes, I do know who Randy Moss is. So I grew up in Walker, Bemidji area. I went to high school in Walker. It reminds me a lot of Spicer, New London area. So it was a kind of a conglomerate. It was Walker, Hackensack, Akeley High School. And then we had 6 other towns that also showed up with students. We lived there my whole high school career. And then as a junior in high school, so I was only 16 then, I started going to college.
Oh,
so I did 4 full years at Bemidji State University, but took advantage of the post-secondary education option in Minnesota. So it's not for everybody. It doesn't always work out that way. My sister did 2 full years of PSEO and still is in her 4th year as a nursing student. So it's one of those rare cases where it happened to work out and I happened to find my niche and I happened to finish in 4 years. I wasn't expecting to.
So you graduated at 20.
So I graduated at, a couple days before I turned 20. Yeah.
From Bemidji State.
From Bemidji State. So I did 4 full years on campus. Some people do it online, or maybe you do a hybrid. Some schools offer college and the high school classes. It really just depends on where you land.
So you said you found your niche?
Yeah. So my first semester, I didn't know what I was going to do. I feel like nobody should know what they're going to do when they go to college.
Correct.
Because you never know where you're going to end up. And I think that keeps your mind the most open. But I happen to have a world geography course with a professor that I just totally got hooked. And I think it was his excitement about geography that got me excited. And I also liked the ability for me to pick geography and still not really know what I was going to do because I still had no clue.
Hey, I did that with history. I graduated with a history degree.
Exactly. So geography is all about how people make place out of space, which is something I talk a lot about in our community or creative placemaking workshops and stuff with Main Street. But it's, it's really just, it's the study of everything that kind of humans do and how they interact with the world. And that just, it totally hooked me. People who major in geography, often are are you going to be a teacher? And I knew I didn't want to be a teacher, but I didn't really know anything beyond that, what I wanted to do.
Call. Yep.
I'm not cut out. I would not be a good teacher. But so where was I going with this? So people do if people major in geography, some people major in physical geography, or they go work with the Park Service or something like that. You might be a teacher or a professor or something like that. GIS, which is computer cartography, and analytics. Some people kind of go into that field. I've got a couple of friends that work for the DNR or a construction company running some GIS stuff. The other kind of area that the area that I fell into was city planning, actually. And it's funny because while I was going through those courses, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Like, be a city planner? No way. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know how that fits into.
To be fair, it sounds super boring to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have to really be able to take ownership of it and get excited about the community. I think that's kind of the philosophy that I've taken, is like, it's really important just to know the community that you're working in, and the things that you're working towards. And I think there's a big difference of being a city planner for a private, like, consulting firm, and there's a big difference between being a planner in a larger city, because you have a much more, like, tunneled, narrow job description. Not tunneled, but you just, like, this is the area that you're focused on. Whereas being in greater Minnesota, you have the ability to do so much more and wear so many different hats and kind of do a little bit of everything, which is much more up my alley, of not doing the same thing over and over, not like just constantly reviewing things, but also thinking, and being able to do like fun, larger projects too.
Can I ask about so you take one class that's on, or a couple classes maybe around, like, kind of what you do now. How much are those classes like what you actually do now? Are they like, because, like, I mean, for example, for me, like, the teaching courses that I was kind of paying attention in were nothing like real teaching. Nothing.
Yeah, I would agree. Some of it, we started to get a little bit more technical. And as I've gotten more into the field, I keep waiting for that, like, more technical piece to come in, and it really doesn't happen. And some of me wonders if, some of that's geared towards planners of larger cities. I think you'd start to be a little bit more technical. The rules and regulations become different when you're dealing with much denser populations and areas. Some of the conceptual stuff was really helpful. We did some, like, qualitative review, how do you create a survey? How do you reach out to people? Some of more of those kind of fuzzy things, if you will, I think actually helped me prepare the most. But I also kind of just dived in, because I don't think that you can really prepare somebody for that. I think the one thing that I've always told, like, high school students that ask me about college or not going to college, is I think that the most valuable thing you get out of college is connections, really, and internships and, like, real life experiences. The classroom stuff is helpful, and you have to go through that piece. But to me, the thing that I always regret is that I didn't do more internships. And I did one, and I did some, like, traveling and in a research project with a professor. But if I could go back, that's the one thing I think I would do, is I would take, like, a larger variety of internships and really just gather more experience.
So Sarah, how did you end up then in Wilmer?
So I was, I graduated in 2017, and then I went to Kenya for a second time. Ran away and did that.
I feel like you're way cooler than us. Well, maybe not Jamie. She's pretty traveled.
Yeah, but not like that kind of travel.
Yeah, well, I've lived like double the life that Sarah has, approximately. I'm rounding a little bit, but Kenya the second time.
So the first time I went was right after I graduated high school.
So you're 11 years old.
Yep. I finished high school. I was 2 years into college. The professor that I first took that class with, he has been going to Kenya for like 20 years or so, and takes students for research projects, like self-design research projects, every couple of years. So I tagged along for 2 of his trips because I could. And I just had a project that I wanted to keep working on, because, Sarah can't just take on like a bite size anything.
Yeah.
Just to take on like,
you're an achiever big time.
Yeah. And then I get myself in over the head, and then I'm like, this isn't going to happen. What am I doing? Right. So I went to Kenya for the second time. in 2017. So it went in 2015 and 2017. We're working in rural Kenya, in a place about halfway between Nairobi and Mombasa, which are on the southern end of Kenya. So it's the capital city and the coastal city. In a little town that actually outdates both cities. It outdates Nairobi for sure. Of about 5,000. So we're working in a slightly more rural area in Kenya. And I really focused on land rights in that area. So there was a large plantation that came in during British colonial time. I haven't told this story in forever. Holy cow. Came in during colonial time and like just took over. So Kenya was a tribal country until Britain came in and kind of imposed their systems on everything. So this plantation comes in, and we estimate that there's about 13 villages that got lost because of the expansive growth of this plantation. It's about 20,000 acres, which is like roughly the size of Minneapolis proper. So this place is like huge, monocrop. They grow sisal, which is it kind of looks like a aloe plant on steroids, basically. But the fibers that you harvest from it are used, like you'll find like sisal rugs and sisal bags, but it was also used in things like elevators and car doors, of all things. So this huge like monocrop plantation that took out all of these villages. But along the borders, there's still a lot of really tense, crazy stories and history to collect of all of this. Like,
there's been some scary stuff going on in that part of the world for a long time now. Mm-hmm. Well, did you feel safe?
Yeah. We, so my professor he grew quite a deep relationship with the guide we have while we're there. He's been doing like NGO work for a really long time as well. Started out working with like farmers and sustainable farming and different farming techniques. A lot around like sacral landscapes, like wood and water resources, all sorts of different things. But Eddie knows everybody. And just like any other rural community, you build relationships and foster those. And it was really, it was an incredible experience. And I dream about going back every day. So
I was going to say, that seems like something that once you get it in your blood, it becomes something that you're just like waiting for the next time, like kind of mentally planning for the next time how you're going to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Kenya for a second time.
Then
Then what happened?
Then I came back, and I actually worked for a private GIS company in Walker for a few months, just temporarily, while I was looking for some other stuff. And just kind of like what the big next thing was. I was dating my husband at the time, who was living in Redwood Falls, and he was going to university in Marshall. So he was still going to school. I was just kind of looking around southern Minnesota in general. He still had 1.5 years, 2 years left. And the Wilmer planner position happened to open up. So I was actually in the middle of an interview in Redwood Falls for a GIS position, but I knew that GIS I was not cut out to just do GIS. I can't sit behind a computer 8 hours a day and just do that. And so the Wilmer position opened up like right as I'm interviewing for this Redwood position. And so I happened to be able to kind of hit pause on the Redwood position. And I called the director at the time. I said, "Hey, I just applied for this job. I'm very, very serious about wanting this position. Like, please take a chance on me." Which is very not characteristic of me, but I knew that I wanted the job because it just seemed like the right fit. And I just had this gut instinct about it that I just needed to take this position. And so I pushed them to set up an interview as soon as possible. and got in the next week. And on the drive home, got a phone call of, hey, we need some more information to do a background check on you. And I was like, holy cow, I can't believe that's happening right now.
Well, I've been alive for 18 years, not going to find anything. So how much did you know about the area when you applied?
Not a whole lot.
Because when I look at your like background and history in like East Africa and what the community had been like growing into over the last probably 15 to 20 years, it seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah. And funny enough, I really didn't. It was only after I got the position and I was like, oh yeah, now I need to like think about moving down there, that I started really doing research, which probably, now that I've been in the field long enough, I know next time, like whatever is next, if I ever look at moving, I would definitely do, I would probably flip-flop that a little bit. But I knew that I wanted to be down in southern Minnesota. Not that I had family down here, but just that Donna was down here going to school, and I was just kind of, the next step was to be in this area. So it all just happened to, well, not just all happened to, but it all aligned and just kept chugging along.
What are the things with your job that you really, really love? And what are the things that are like really, really challenging?
That was my question.
Yeah. I love the people.
Oh, I said it first.
The people by far is my favorite thing.
Which people, and like how do you work with them?
Yeah.
Us? No.
You don't have to say names. But I mean.
I like helping people. I like being a bridge. So I like helping people better understand process. I like getting people engaged in process. I think the only way to build community is to build it with everybody in mind. And I think that's often because of constraints or statutory requirements or whatever it might be. It's not always the easy route, but I think it's the most effective and the most important. And so I like being that bridge of, okay, here's what we're required to do, and here's the people, and how do we bring the people along and really make them the process rather than the process. Yeah. So that's probably my favorite part of the job. And I just like building relationships. I like building relationships with the people that I'm working with, whether it's on a specific project or just in the community in general. Hardest part about my job, I think, it's funny, I've been asked this question a couple of times now and I keep thinking about it, but I think I still go back to like the process. Getting in the way is sometimes my least favorite thing. Is that
like you know what the right thing to do is, but you have to
jump through a lot of what seems like unnecessary hurdles.
Yeah. And I know that they're there for a reason, right? Like sometimes there's logical reason why certain statutes are in place or why we have, certain kind of regulations or standard patterns that we have to go through. But I think we're at a very pivotal time where kind of this next generation of planners, there's more and more talk about like proper community engagement. And instead of letting the statutes be something that just stand there and like allow us to go through the motions and, okay, we've met our statute requirements, we can be done and we've done our due diligence and we can move on and call this project good. We can go one step further. And I think that the more we have passionate people that care about our communities that we live in as planners, the better that will be.
So
can I ask
what
a
would
question?
you say? Okay, fine.
I have to quickly get something out before Tyler starts talking. So, Sarah, I have a lot of preconceived notions about the type of people that you work with.
Yep.
mainly their age and their thought processes. So I'm curious if you could like talk about the struggle of coming into like trying to be a change maker, because I know that you are, and being a young female, like what the dynamics were like trying to accomplish things or like tell people, in a sense, sometimes giving direction to people that are older than you.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Do the old people actually listen to you, or do they just dismiss you because of your age? That's what she's trying to say nicely.
I
feel like sometimes I have to walk the balance of, I'm like, in some ways I'm in a position of authority, but in other ways, like, I'm definitely not. And so it's weighing the odds of like what is worth kind of going to battle about sometimes. That sounds probably harsher than it is, but and some of it is I've got a lot of ability to kind of recommend what this process should look like, or what sort of time should we be putting into this project, or like what should the community engagement strategy look like for this project. And I think that's been a huge growth area for me too, is just being able to just communicate that and just say, okay, here's what we're required to do, but if we can come at it from this other angle, take one extra step, like, I think our end result is going to be much more robust than what we would otherwise see. And I think that people are generally pretty open to that, which I've been thankful for. It may not always be the case for people kind of coming into that environment, but I think that when there's a person coming in with like a willing voice and a willing strategy and willing to put in the work to make that happen, I think that that's a little bit of a different situation than just saying, like, just standing out there and saying, how dare you do it that way? You should be doing it differently, right? And just leaving it at that. I think when you come in showing that little bit of effort, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, people can tell when you're passionate about something, and then sometimes, or shouldn't matter, you know, your age, right, your sex, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not to say that, you know, being a young female isn't easy either. But I think that the more there's just a lot of retirements across the board happening right now. And I think if we don't step up, then who will? And if I can provide somebody else with like even a glimmer of hope of going into something in this realm of planning or like civic engagement, then I feel pretty satisfied in that, I think.
Can we hear about just like what is the structure around your position? Like, you know, is there like a board, or is it the city council, or how does that all fit together with you?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. I help with the planning commission, which to me, the planning commission would be like second in command in any city to a city council. Planning commission generally has the authority, or that like planning body has the authority to make recommendations to council on all like land decisions. So anything that has to do with land, the planning commission will review in one way, shape, or form. Whether sometimes in Wilmer they have the authority to make the final decision. They do with all like property owner requests, or the majority of them. So like if you want to do something in a zone that requires like a conditional use permit, which means that it fits within kind of our vision for that zone. So maybe it's like a commercial zone. So it fits within that vision, but we want to make sure that you have certain standards or certain provisions that you've thought about within that site plan. Then Planning Commission has the authority to review that, approve or deny, or approve it with conditions, which would mean that, you know, maybe you need to put a fence up because you're right by a residential area, or maybe you need to provide enough parking spaces or something like that. So Planning Commission is second in command, and they're really the ones that I work the most with. There are certain processes and applications and different things that also need to go to city council. And so generally I will get the kind of the planning commission all on board, get them satisfied with what they need to review and have their stuff, and then it'll get forwarded to city council. Occasionally I go to city council. That's more the department director's position. Is to interface with council more. So, and then there's also within ordinances and statutes, there's also things that myself as like a staff person has the authority to approve or deny as long as it's within the kind of the parameters set. But I think government and nonprofit worlds are similar in the sense that like there is ultimately a board that governs what we do.
Right. And so you're working with groups that are making decisions that are in government, or government-ish. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And it seems like today, any decisions made by government always create backlash. They probably always have, but people didn't know about it enough, or they couldn't find the news as quickly.
Yeah.
Are you ever working on things, decisions made, or there's some sort of battle, kind of as you put it, not like physically, but where you're nervous about the outcome, or you're wondering how the public is going to react to this? Is that ever in your brain or not?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and sometimes there are decisions that really are just like legislative decisions. Like what direction do you as a, representation of a community want to go? And, the nature of that is that not everyone's going to agree, which is always difficult because you're going to hear from the side that doesn't agree. And you're going to hear the 50 other ways that it could have or should have gone in somebody's opinion. And I think because I work in that world so much, I have that kind of mentality. I've always been a very like gray person, right? I'm not really black, I'm not really white. When it comes to decision making, which is funny because I have to make decisions like all the time in my position. But I think that helps me soften my view sometimes as well on what decisions are being made, whether I agree with them or not, whether it's locally or otherwise.
But are people calling you and they're like, hey, I saw this in the paper, or I saw this like decision was made. What are you like, do you ever get that?
Yeah.
How do you handle that? You're 22.
Yeah. When I first started, I could tell you a number of stories where people would call me and not be happy about something. And I'd like sit there and I'd take it and and they'd hang up. And I was like, I just lose it. And I was like, like, how do I separate myself from this? But I think that, as I've worked in that world long enough and had enough of those conversations and those phone calls, I tend to either I will like ground myself back in like what the ordinance is or what the statute is, or the planning commission's decision. I said, if it's not a decision that you agree with, we've got openings on these other boards that maybe you could have influence on, or I think it's coming up with solutions, because I think sometimes people just need to vent that.
Yeah, they don't actually want to take. They don't want to take action. They just want to complain. Right?
Yeah,
you're like,
so
well, you're
playing like this therapist hat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love how you said you like direct them to. Oh, if you're unhappy with that and you think it's dead wrong, there are these positions available where you can get involved and you can work to do this. And they're like, well, yeah, I gotta go. And then they're out.
Yeah. Because I think having as much, we want our boards of our city to represent our city, right? And so if you feel like your voice isn't being represented, in whatever capacity that means, I guarantee you that there's something I can find for you to go sit on or do. Absolutely.
Are you like gonna run for office of something someday?
Who knows? What's
That's
next?
a yes. That's a yes.
I think I mean, I think there's a piece of me that I think after I work in this field long enough, I'm very much a person who wants to feel prepared, and like knowledgeable of, okay, this is what I should expect from this, and I can rely on this experience that I have to back up, whatever I'm doing. But also that means you have to go through the trenches sometimes a little bit first.
And your name is in the paper quite a bit for different things.
Yeah.
And so I guess like my question is, are you at what's called like an at-will employee? Or are you like the contract is renewed all the time? Or
yes.
Like, could the city council be like, today we're just gonna fire Sarah?
No.
Okay, they can't.
No, there's most city employees are a part of a union.
Okay.
So we have that kind of protection. Interestingly, there are like staff positions, especially in counties, that are renewed like every 4 years, which I never knew before. It's actually kind of a recent finding. I find that interesting, but
because I know there are like, and maybe it's just in smaller communities, I'm not sure, but there are at-will employees that basically the contract is automatically renewed with that individual, that employee, but they can be let go at any time for no reason or for any reason.
Right.
And the only reason I was asking about that is when your name is in the paper a lot, you have to kind of be mindful of what you're saying, how, like, what's going, like the content coming out from you, however that is, whether it's something you say publicly that gets recorded or something that you put out online. I just find it interesting that you're probably very intentional and careful about that, but yet we have business owners that should be as intentional and careful about that, and then they just don't seem to be, especially right now.
Yeah. And I think so. I just last week, the National American Association of Planners, that's a mouthful, was supposed to have a national conference at the end of April. That obviously did not happen, and I wasn't going to go, but then they pivoted the entire conference and did a 3-day at-home conference. I was super impressed. It was really great. And we had a really good session on just like planning ethics. And so that like national association is very, very well known, very reputable. And they're a really good touch point too for planners to kind of go back to as to, here's how you might navigate that situation, or here's how you as a planner living in the community that you're planning for, there's some ethics and there's some things to think about in that world too that, I wouldn't have thought about otherwise if they hadn't necessarily talked about, but thinking about how, maybe some sort of plan that you're planning for, maybe you live in that area and maybe that could potentially benefit you, and like making sure that you're disclosing those kind of things, or there's a whole world of like how your decisions affect yourself and others that you really have to have into consideration when you're working on some of those major projects.
What is Wilmer Main Street?
Wilmer Main Street is a... Oh no, now I'm going to totally botch this.
I mean, I didn't feel like I was putting you on the spot with that.
No, you're not.
Like
I feel like it's taken me this long. Jamie's seen me the whole journey of me like being able to explain this. It's a program connected to the National Main Street organization that focuses on making sure that Main Street is as vibrant as it should be. And so that might mean thinking about the design of downtown, that might be thinking about the organization, that might be thinking about like the economic vitality and just the overall like vibrancy of, do we have things that people want to be doing, that people know about, that they're excited about downtown, all of those kind of things. And so it's a directed effort at vitality downtown.
So you got somehow roped into that position. When you started in Wilmer, they were like, here's this thing.
Yeah.
We're not quite doing much with it, but here's the ball that you're going to carry, pretty much, right?
Yeah, and I really didn't know anything about National Main Street, or Main Street America when I kind of first jumped into this, but I'm so glad that I said yes, because it's one of the favorite, that's another like huge favorite part of my job. So it used to be a separate organization, and then that organization ended, but Minnesota Main Street, kind of each state has like a coordinating program for all of the cities underneath it or within that state. And they didn't want to see us end our affiliation. And so the city decided that they were going to take over the program, and let it be a program of the city. And that's where I kind of fit in, because it's about, there's an element of planning. There's an element of just thinking about downtown, like within our community, that fits within what a planner would do, and economic development and community development and that kind of realm of stuff.
But there's kind of an interesting challenge too. It's not just like a downtown that maybe just needs a couple of injections of money and a couple of good like investments. There's like a cultural investment that needs to happen here for this community to spend a little time learning, and that I think would benefit everyone. And there are those I think that are really open to it. Like the goodness people really they're into it. They're like they tried, and are trying to be kind of like a facilitator of that cultural learning. And how much does that fact of this community and the downtown specifically, how much is that like always a variable or a factor in what you're doing?
I think it's always a variable, because new Americans, anybody that's not white, that's in our community is still a part of our community, right? And we have to take that into consideration in everything we do. I agree. I think that it's interesting that we talked about timing earlier, because I think from what I'm told, from what I can gather, when we're 5 years ago, even, I don't think we would have a very different result of this effort, and just kind of this continuation of this effort. And so it's really kind of, again, one of those like pivotal times that Main Street America really focuses a lot about building from the assets that we already have. And I think that's an approach that I've attempted to take with a lot of the messaging and a lot of the conversations that I have around Main Street, is that we've got so many assets. When I'm in a director's meeting with 12 other directors from around the state, and they're talking about vacancies, and they're talking about, everybody rolling up shop at 6 p.m. and going home, those really aren't conversations that I contribute a whole lot to, because we don't have a high vacancy rate. If you drive down Litchfield Avenue at 8 p.m. at night, like there's neon signs on and people are walking around. And I think it's a lot of this conversation about how do I be a bridge? How do we take where we are now, and allow that to be a bridge to where we will be and what we want to be in the future, but also not losing sight of what Main Street has been, because people have this super deep connection to place, and what downtown Wilmer used to be, and that we don't want to lose that. That's still really, really important, but we also don't want to be stuck there, and to say we want to go back to that, it's just not really a reality.
And if that past would have been so great and successful, it wouldn't need any help.
Right.
That is as someone that doesn't really like the old ways, or doesn't hold them up on a pedestal like some people do, that it's hard, I think, to fight against that without people being insulted, like without them being offended when you say, like, I understand that it was great way back when, or at least you perceived it that way. But that's gone, and we have to not be so hurt about it, but try to plan on like what's the best future for everyone, not just this sort of idyllic 3 decades ago that you kind of envision.
Yeah. And I think one hard part about that too is that while the past is gone, we're still working and living and like existing in a built environment, which means that it's not entirely gone.
Right.
And so people draw back to that. It's so easy to draw back to that because you can see a building and say, oh, I remember when. And so it makes me excited about like the pivot so Minnesota Main Street is with the Preservation Alliance, or what used to be the Preservation Alliance, and they rebranded to be called Rethos, which is all about places reimagined. And this idea that we can have these historic places that don't need to sit vacant and don't need to be seen as like old or frumpy, but we can make them work for what we want them to be today, which is, I think, such a cool approach to thinking about just like historic buildings and historic places. Because I think that allows you to still have that touch point to the past while allowing it to work for us today too.
Right.
What are some of the goals you have for Wilmer Main Street?
I'm really excited to see the traction that we've continued to build. It's very much like a one step after another sort of process, which I can get really wrapped up in some days and being like, we're not going anywhere. Is this even worth it? Like, what are we doing here? But I think
never have moments like that ever.
Relatable.
But I think back to like just where we started even and the progress that we've made and some of the grants we've received for projects and the people that are getting involved with those grants and different things. I think I want to see continued progress and awareness. And I think that makes me most excited about having you guys involved with Wilmer Main Street is just the consistency that it brings even within the first couple of months of just being more consistent on social media and watching all of the interaction increase and the excitement increase. Because I think a lot of it is about visibility. And especially right now, it's really crucial that you're visible on social media and on the internet and whatever channels that is. So, continued progress. I want to see kind of an updated vision, which I think we're going to kind of start as a planner. I always think about, big master plans and all of this kind of stuff, but not just a master plan that is like, oh, good, we've done that. Like that can be pretty on the shelf now. But something that says, okay, here in the next 2 years, here are the tangible things that we are going to work towards. The tangible things that, we want the sidewalks to look a certain way, and we're going to invest in these streets this year and these streets next year, whatever that process might look like. Because I think that when we as an organization, we as a city show investment in the community, that just gets people excited about them being involved too.
For sure.
When you have those meetings with you say 12 other city planners or something like that.
Yeah.
What is the average age of the other 11? And how much is social media a factor or a discussion point in those meetings?
So the meetings that I mentioned were with other Main Street directors. The majority of Main Streets actually have some sort of connection more to a chamber or a central, a visitors bureau or something like that. They age. It's actually pretty across the board. Obviously, I'm the youngest because I'm always the youngest. The heck. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. It just isn't. Ugh. They're, I don't know, late 20s, 30s, 40s.
Oh, okay.
Pretty across the board. But and then some older too. what was the second part to that question?
How much is social media
yeah.
a discussion topic or seen as a potential tool to use?
A lot. And
Really?
I think it's something that, because there's quite a few main streets that I think are pretty active or have a pretty large following, and they rely on that pretty heavily to just talk about, things that are going on or events to get connected to or volunteers needed or what just overall promotion of somebody's downtown too. But I think that so many people don't feel confident in their social media abilities whatsoever.
Why do you
for
think
them,
that is?
so there's always that conversation of like, okay, what social media channel should I be on? How should I be posting? What content should I be posting? How do I tackle this like seemingly beast in front of me? Is I think a constant conversation that we're having.
Sure. And there is no perfect answer. It kind of depends on your community and depends on who you are as a person.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is. I think as video becomes so big, it's like, how do we fit that into our budget if we want a professional video, or how do we do it ourselves? Like, what does that even look like, and how authentic, do I need to tape the video? Do I need to do a live video? What's the quality going to look like? Like, there's so many questions that go into that. For us to be able to work with like hyper marketing last year was a really fun project, to videotape artists on Main Street projects, because that's not anything that any other city was able to do. And part of that's just because of our structure, and because I'm a city staff person, that we kind of have two different budgets operating. So we were able to make that happen.
Yeah, that plays to your advantage a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I think that video, we've talked about it a lot too. I think video is one way that you can really bring people into that space, whether it's a business or just downtown in general, and help them feel invited and welcome and like a part of that space before they're even there physically, which I think is huge for bridging some of that gap between, maybe a business or something that somebody isn't comfortable walking into right away by themselves, or even with a friend. If it's like trying out a new restaurant like Somali Star, like being able to kind of bring them into that space before they're there is huge.
Yeah. There's a level of comfortability that like that video can bring to somebody and make them feel like they've experienced something before they've actually experienced it, which in the case of downtown is critical, because there's some like weird assumptions that get made by people that just are a little like less educated.
Yeah.
So video can be a way to break down that barrier for sure.
It's just a way to make people, to give depth, the depth even of this, of we could all be on the phone talking and it's not the same. Now, granted, it's not in person, which is the best, but at least you can like read someone's posture and like see their eyes and see their face. And there's a level of relationship building that can happen that just doesn't happen if you write something out. Just take a look at the media. Written words can be interpreted lots of different ways, but when someone's speaking and humility is something that's pretty universally registered and like detectable by humans. And you can build relationships with people if you're authentic and humble, that you can do in video that you can't, if you do it the right way, that you just can't really do any other way. And it's gonna, for us, it's an interesting challenge because we're not selling a thing. Usually we're selling things, or like a service. And so we have to really understand, like, what's your vision? Who are we trying to reach? And then what can we show those people to compel them to want to either take some action or learn more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what's next right now, Sarah? If people want to like get involved in something Wilmer City related, like, or the Wilmer Main Street thing, like what would you recommend for them to do?
So from the city side, if you're ever interested in getting involved with that, I know that there are a couple positions I can think of that are open on boards and stuff. You can always call city offices. There's an application, super easy, that they'll direct you to, but they can give you a better idea of like what positions are open on city boards. So always call your city and just ask about what positions are open. There's a couple Main Street Board positions currently open that we're looking at filling within this next kind of month or so, hopefully. We're kind of right in the middle of running our second Artists on Main Street grant round, which is direct support to local artists. And our challenge is for them to create gathering spaces downtown, which is a really interesting conversation to have right now when we can't be in person. So there's kind of twofold, like there's a lot of flexibility in when those have to happen. If they don't happen until next year, we can work with that. That's totally fine. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because we had our kind of study hall this past weekend. There's actually quite a few artists who were talking about like, well, we want to give people a sense of purpose right now. And then whatever we're kind of like calling them to do in their homes, we will then make into a larger project once we can all be together again, which I think is a really fun way to kind of bring people together now and create like a sense of gathering online, and then also bring them together in person later.
Give people something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited that we're continuing to move forward with that project. I think we might be the only city that's actually moving forward with that timeline right now. I think a lot of other cities have just kind of hit pause altogether and are just kind of waiting until people can be in person again. So I'm excited that we're moving forward with that. I think there'll be some really cool projects and some cool documentation that happens through that process. What else is next? Those are kind of the big heavy hitters right now.
All right, I got two final questions. One, okay. Do you feel like it's you're almost like a cook kind of, or like putting a puzzle, like you have all these resources, you just need to figure out how they work together and how you can just like organize them in a way that it starts to grow on its own a little bit. Yeah. Is that kind of how it is for you? Yeah, absolutely. I love partnerships. I love working with other people. I think it's really important to celebrate like all of the hard work that's happened before and all of the things that exist right now. So if somebody else is already doing the work, like let's just partner and amplify what's already going on, or just, make those connections that need to happen to bring a project together. That's really fulfilling to me. I love doing that. And then my last question, and then Jamie, if she wants to ask another one, she can. Let's assume that it is now, it's now been 20 years, and you are now 42 years old, about to be 43. And well, no, 23 years. So now you're 45, about to be 46, which means you can be president. And you've somehow invested well, or you have millions. What's the highest political aspiration that you've dreamt of actually having?
I've literally never dreamt of having any sort of political office.
Really?
Yeah, which is interesting. I am so connected and so passionate to like the local level and being in the trenches that I've just never, I don't know.
You get so far up.
You get so far up. But then I also think about like, okay, if I was able to progress higher, whatever that would look like, then I know I would have a very specific agenda of like supporting local, and making way for that and making way for voices that aren't heard. So how do I
like state rep?
How do I weigh that? I don't know. We'll see. Who knows?
I'm excited.
Save my signature. It might be worth something someday, and it might not.
I don't think it's legally a bribe if you don't have a position yet, and we just hand you a check, and we're like, "Hey, we'll call this in when we need a favor."
Mm-hmm. I would vote for Sarah.
Uh-huh. We'll start it. We'll start that Facebook page.
Okay.
Sarah, 2036. No, 2046.
So far away.
That's a long way.
That's a very long way.
I have a random question.
Okay.
Because I'm just curious, what kind of books or podcasts are you currently listening to? 'Cause you just seem like mature for your age.
Well, I have a lot of
stuff
older.
are you interested in?
Yeah, I have a lot of older family. Like I've always kind of had that, like older vibe. I guess I don't know. I have sisters that are like 10 years older than I am, so
You're ahead of your time.
it probably helps. What am I reading? I feel like I've been failing to read a lot lately. I listen to some cool podcasts. I should pull them up. This one called The Forever Game.
Hey.
Hey, there you go.
Soon to be award-winning, maybe.
Soon to, yes. I'm pulling mine up. What else do I listen to? I listen to the APA podcast, right? Like the Planners podcast, because that's who I am.
Oh, I knew
That's
there
a
was going to be
thing.
something nerdy like that.
Oh, yeah. 99% Invisible is another good one. Radiotopia puts out some really good podcasts, but 99% Invisible is one that I like to listen to.
What's that about?
It's just a bunch of random stuff. They just cover stories about like fun. Sometimes they're weird. Random things that you might not have known, like, you know, these like under the rock stories that you would not have otherwise heard. They've talked about anything from like recycling and like the realities behind recycling to like how NICUs got started, like the neonatal units. They actually used to be like freak shows. Like literally the best care for your preemie baby was to bring them to like this circus freak show. And this doctor was like working on creating the beds that they all stayed in different, like, it was a crazy story. So there's another one I listened to.
Did not think that was going to be something that we talked about.
No, you never know. What else do I listen to?
Was just curious what kind of...
You know what I'm...
It's kind of a whole smorgasbord. I listen to a lot of cooking podcasts. I love to cook. Growing up, that's like all I ever did. I worked for a local catering company / deli / we ran the like local farmers market in Walker. So I just cooked all the time. It was the best job growing up.
I have a follow-up question then to that. What social platform do you spend the most time on?
Instagram. Yeah. I have like 25 notifications waiting for me on LinkedIn. That's really something that I should do.
Yeah.
That's where you're really going to build your network. And when you run for office.
To get on that.
I'm on it. The only reason that was Twitter. The one time I got on Twitter was because our college, we were doing this GIS assignment in college, where if you geotag your tweets, there's actually script. Oh, fun fact about me, I have a minor in computer science. I don't know if I'll ever use that in my life, but you know,
It's there.
But there's like the script where you can pull, say you want to pull like tweets from within the US that have these hashtags or like reference these things. And then you can so you run this script in this like mapping software, and then it like, poof, it like shows you, it like locates them and puts all the dots on the map. That's pretty cool. But that's why I created
Sounds vaguely creepy.
It's a little bit creepy.
What's the best thing you make?
Gosh dang it, that's another question I got earlier.
Okay, let me be more specific.
Yeah, be more
It
specific.
would probably involve large amounts of sugar and or butter.
Are you talking cooking?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm interested.
Cinnamon rolls. I've been huge into making cinnamon rolls lately.
Huge
Killer.
into eating them.
What's your frosting ratio?
I love frosting.
Yes.
Yes. I'm in.
Yes.
Stop it. She tries to jump on this like, oh, I love eating bad food thing. That's a load of bullshit.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Portage Brewing Company in Walker makes the cinnamon coffee.
It's a coffee cake blonde.
Coffee cake blonde. I think that I need to go buy some next time I'm at my parents' house, and then make some cinnamon rolls and yep, that's the deal.
Sarah, if I see that beer, I'll get it for you because they distribute it to the Twin Cities now too, so it's around.
It is.
Cinnamon rolls. Good.
Cinnamon
Do you make your own
rolls.
frosting?
Yes.
What do you put in it?
Cream cheese.
Cream cheese frosting is the bomb.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cream cheese frosting, you can't go wrong. I actually, the first time I made this particular recipe of cinnamon rolls that I've fallen in love with, Jono did not think that. Jono thought they were just like from the store. They were so soft and
they were that legit.
Yeah, I was pretty proud.
I don't believe you.
Tyler wants some.
All right, maybe I'll make a batch soon.
All right. Well, Sarah, thank you for being on the Forever Game podcast. I look forward to the high caloric treats that you're going to be making for us, bathed in frosting. A little frosting on the side would be smart as well, just for dipping.
Yep.
And
like the bottom half. That
we're excited to work with you.
Yes, I'm excited to work with you guys.
To continue working with you.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's the
end.
All
right.
So what did you think?
Hey, I could do that. That was pretty slick.
It was pretty painless. It actually went really fast.
What time is it?
We were going for a while.
Holy moly. Wow.
Yeah.
Fair enough. It's always good when it turns out to last longer than you think.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good sign.
I've been in some recent KCEO like Zoom calls with my students. Oof. We had one 2 weeks ago, and this guy was talking. I swore it had to have been 60 minutes, and it was like 14 minutes. It was awful. It was awful.
Yeah, that's
slowly all the kids started turning their video off. Over the course of 10 minutes, all the videos went black.
Yeah, that's how you know.
I joined the video off.
Oh, dear.
It may or may not have gone to the bathroom.
Oh, this is random, but Tyler, you should participate. Well, both of you should, but the Wednesday event this week is about TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
And pretty much nobody knows anything about TikTok that's going to partake. So if you want to talk about your journey, Tyler.
Sure. I've made a few TikToks.
I know you have.
Let's go check out my account. Oh, yeah. We got a few hundred views on each of these. Let's go check out Jamie's. Let's see what Jamie's
Mine has that one got close to 300 or 400 or something.
415. You've made one?
Yeah. And I should post another one. I should just keep playing to this randomness that I
like that's another one that I need to mess with more.
You know what? I'm going to make a couple of TikToks today just in preparation for Wednesday's meeting.
Yeah, you should.
That'd be good. Okay, I get to go now jump on speech awards. This is so weird, having them end in the middle of their season and not finish out. They didn't have a state tournament or anything like that.
Totally. Yeah, basically my class is just going to be over.
Yeah.
CEO, you mean?
Yeah.
There's another fun fact about me. I won one of the categories in state speech one year.
Really?
You're such a good speaker. You're
I
so
attribute it to speech. Absolutely.
Tell me it was some sort of drama.
No, the category is called informative, so I literally had visuals and was talking about wireless electricity. So your charging pads where your phone sits on the charging pad and there's this little symbol in the bottom corner. It looks like QI. It's called Qi.
Mm-hmm.
So back in, what would this have been? 2013. So 7 years ago, I gave a whole speech about this stuff before it was even a thing.
Oh, that was the old coffee. Really gross.
Oof. Before it was even a thing, and won state speech with it, and everyone was like, holy cow, this is so cool. I can't believe this. I was like, it's coming. So talk about honing my skill of being able to take something boring and make it really exciting.
Right.
That's pretty much what you do every day.
That's like what you have to do with Inform to be good.
I think you do that every day, Sarah, with your role.
Yeah, that's what I love about it.
You make it seem like really
interesting. And it's really
interesting to you, but for people that it doesn't really get excited, just excited. I can listen to you talk about it.
Right.
You probably have a nice level of patience that some of us don't have.
Yeah.
It's true. All right, ladies.
All right.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Forever Game Podcast as much as we enjoyed creating it. And I have a question for you. Do you like your social media marketing? If you're an individual or a business and you don't love the content you put out, let us help you. We love doing this stuff. We would love to give you advice. We would love to help you execute whatever it is you need. We want to be there to help you. Creating content for social media and marketing on social media should be fun. Let us help you do that. If you or someone you know needs help with their social media marketing, we would love, just love, if you sent them our name. We hope to talk to you soon. Stay safe. Peace.